All right, so now that I have my trees all taped out, now I'm ready to start on my watercolor portion of the project. So here's a completed project, and I just want to point out a couple of things that we're going to be doing next. So the very next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add in the horizon line. And the horizon line is the single line where the sky and the land meet. So you can see that my sky comes the entire way down and meets up with the land, or like the snow here, which I colored blue. I think on my next one, I'm gonna add a little bit less so it looks more white and blue. And so I just wanna point out my horizon line back here though, because that is so important. You have to have a separation between the sky and the land, and I wanna point out that the sky, when you do paint it, you are going to bring it the whole way down to that line. I know we have some other details on here. We're gonna add those in too. You guys can be creative and add whatever kind of details you want. But we have this horizon line, and I want you to notice that where I put it, all of the trees have to be on the ground portion, like the bottoms of them do. So we have this tree, notice it's on the snow, this tree here. I couldn't have put my horizon line down here. If I would have, these trees would be floating up in the sky. So I have to make sure that I put my horizon line up high enough on the paper so that the bottoms of the trees all end up on the ground. So now I'm gonna go back to my paper here. So I can't put it down here, or I'd have a floating tree here and a floating tree here. So I need to put it up about here, and I can even go higher if I want. And I'm gonna paint that in on this one with a blue line. So I'm just gonna grab the tiniest bit of blue. I am just barely petting the surface of that watercolor with a little bit of blue. And I'm gonna add that in right here. So now notice that the bottoms of my trees are all on the ground, no floating trees. Okay, once I'm done with that, now I can start painting my sky. So as you saw on this one, I chose sunset colors, right? Red, orange, purple, a little bit of blue in there. You guys can choose whatever colors you want for your sky. Be creative. You could even look up on Google Images sunrise or sunset colors to kind of get an idea. My tip to you is when you're adding the watercolor to the paper is to use more water than you think you need. So I'm barely petting the surface of this paint, and I'm just gonna start blending and adding a little bit of extra water and being very gentle. I don't wanna like rub too much on the paper, or we could put a hole in the paper. But this is called a wash, when we have like more wet paper and then we're just adding the colors to it. So I think I'm gonna do something similar, but like a little bit different. So you can see the colors are really watery, really transparent, and that'll help them all blend together. And if you get a little too much paint and it's a little too, it's not blending as much, just add a little bit more water to your brush, go over top of it, and then blend it out. So make sure you clean your brush before you stick it in a different color. So I just cleaned my brush before I stuck it in yellow. You can see how clean that yellow is staying. All right, so I don't want to pick up my paper right now because I have a lot of water on it. I don't want any of that to move around. Your paper might turn gray a little bit where you have the most water, but that will dry whenever, that will go away whenever the paper completely dries, so don't worry about that. That's totally normal. And we are going to focus on the bottom now of our painting down in the snow. So again, I feel like I added too much blue on this one. It almost looks like the trees are in water. And so I want to kind of create the texture, the appearance of snow, but without painting the whole thing blue and making that water appear. So I'm just going to kind of put a little bit of blue like here and there, and my brush has a lot of water on it, meaning that the paint is going to end up very transparent on the paper. I can really see through the paint. So I'm just adding a little bit of color. If I feel like it's too dark, I'm just going to kind of rinse my brush, add a little bit more water, kind of move that color around. All right, so I'm much happier with how the snow turned out on this one than on my last one. Notice how I left like open areas, so it definitely looks more like snow. I need to set my paper aside to let it dry before I can go back on top and do my details. If you try to paint details on top of a really, really wet paper, the paint will just kind of bleed out everywhere and just kind of start blending in with all of those colors. So if you want crisp lines, you have to wait until your paint on your base layer is dry.